I'm joined by Congressmember Dan Goldman. Congressman, Donald Trump has been canceling appearance after appearance. He just canceled an NRA event. He canceled a CNBC appearance. He's backed out of a 60 Minutes appearance. A lot of people are now focused on his cognitive issues, his health issues. He continues to hide his medical records. Do you see this as a legitimate concern that should be raised right now?
It's a huge concern, Ben. He not only has withdrawn and backed out of a lot of interviews that he's agreed to, he also had a very strange town hall where he answered a couple of questions before just standing on stage for 40 minutes while music played. That is not normal behavior. And we're talking about a 78-year-old person who continues to speak in very disjointed ways, to be generous, non sequiturs, conspiracy theories, but even worse, just his sentences don't follow each other. And that is a sign of cognitive decline. And the fact that he won't reveal any medical records, that he hasn't revealed any medical records, even from the shooting in Butler, Pennsylvania, is of concern. And his age as the oldest nominee for president in history is very much a significant issue if he's going to be in office for 4 years.
I'll show you that moment from that town hall where I think for about 20 minutes he was, I think, doing what he calls the weave, where, to me, it looks like dementia-like symptoms where his sentences are not following other sentence structures. And then he's like, you know what? Let's just play some music. I just want to listen to music. And then bobbed his head. Let's watch this.
Let's not do any more questions. Let's just listen to music. Let's make it into a music. Who the hell wants to hear questions, right? Isn't that beautiful, though? It's so beautiful. And we played that in Butler, Pennsylvania. We had a moment of silence, and then we had the bells of Notre Dame go off, and then we had a great opera singer, Christopher, who was so incredible, and a great, great opera singer.
Also, how do you have the governor of South Dakota there moderating an event in Oaks, Pennsylvania? And then there's another clip where she's like, should we play your favorite songs, Donald? I mean, the whole scene is just so bizarre.
Well, it's not only bizarre, but it also reflects his unwillingness to take any tough questions. And he refuses to debate Vice President Harris again. And on the one hand, I understand because she completely humiliated him in the first debate. But even in a town hall with a softball supporter of another Republican governor giving you layup questions, and he says, who wants to hear questions and answers? Well, you are running for president, so we would like to hear your answers to some things. And when you start looking at what he has actually enumerated as part of his plans or his policies, you look at his economic policy, there are two components to it. Reduce taxes for the uber wealthy and increase tariffs. And somehow that is supposed to solve the affordability crisis we're facing. That's supposed to bring down grocery prices. That's supposed to bring down energy prices. None of it makes sense. And so the reason he clearly is withdrawing from so many different opportunities to speak to the American people in a way where he may be challenged and facts might actually matter is a reflection of his inability to actually specify and enumerate what his plan is. And he is trying to hide until November 5th so that he won't turn off any more people from his crazy rantings.
One of the things that, I think corporate media never picked up on, but that we've covered here consistently at the MeidasTouch Network, at that most of his rallies, and he's kind of stopped doing it now to kind of, I guess, hide it. But up until very recently, he would start his rallies by playing a new version of the national anthem that he calls the January 6th anthem. And then they would have the person announcing it say, please rise for the unfairly treated hostages of J6. And then Donald Trump went out and put this music out on iTunes and then bragged that it had better ratings than Taylor Swift. Let me just play for you, just so if everyone's like, whoa, this isn't happening. This happens at mostly all of his speeches until he's been in hiding right now. Here, play this clip.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the horribly and unfairly treated January 6th hostages.
That's how he starts his speeches in a campaign for president of the United States.
And the use of hostages is incredibly offensive. You see this pin. This is in solidarity to the hostages that still remain in Gaza, who were illegally abducted and treated horribly and have been treated horribly for over a year. And the notion of comparing the January 6th defendants who rioted and ransacked the Capitol to actual innocent civilians who were abducted by a terrorist organization and kept in dark, dank tunnels with very little food is offensive. And yet this is something that Donald Trump is doubling down on, tripling down on. And you even have J.D. Vance now, of course, singing the same tune, saying that he does not believe that Joe Biden won the election. He would not have certified the election as Mike Pence did. And for ever shifting reasons, Ben, as well, all of them bogus and all of them definitively proven not to be true. But when we say we have to protect our democracy by making sure that Donald Trump does not enter the Oval Office again, this is what we're talking about. Almost 4 years later, he still believes that the rioters on January 6th were justified. And he still says there was love in the air. And he still says that they did nothing wrong. He just did it on a Univision town hall recently. It is inexcusable and disqualifying. And that's why you have so many of his former administration officials, from his former vice president to cabinet defense secretaries, his former secretary of state, his former chief of staff. These are the people he appointed at the highest levels of government who worked the closest with him, all of whom say he is unfit to be president and he is a danger to our country if he becomes president. And so you don't have to take my word for it, because his own people are saying the same thing.
You put out a video as part of a continuing series on Project 2025. One of the tactics of Donald Trump, though, and J.D. Vance and that ilk is to then pretend that the things they talk about in their speeches and on Fox are actually not things that they espouse when they're writing the forwards to the books and they're hanging out with the people and they're talking about all those ideas. And then they lie all the time and then say the things that the Democratic Party, President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris delivered are things that they delivered when it wasn't, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's reducing insulin prices. They then gaslight the American people or just lie. So how does the truth-loving community get out the word, though, in the next few days, several days, but as we're getting closer to the election?
Well, it's harder and harder when he won't do any interviews that are not softballs, that are not Fox News or Kristi Noem. And he won't go on 60 Minutes because his requirement that he not be fact-checked would not be met. I mean, that's a journalistic malpractice not to fact-check someone. And the reason he doesn't want to be fact-checked is for exactly what you're pointing out, which is he is gaslighting the American people. He is flat out lying. And as it relates to Project 2025, he is also lying about him having nothing to do with it. It was written by his former administration officials. It incorporates many policies that he tried to implement in his first administration. Almost the entire immigration section is very similar to what he tried to do with the child separation policy and other draconian immigration rules and regulations. Schedule F, which is the subject of the most recent video that we put out in our series, was something he tried to implement. And if I could just take a second to discuss Schedule F, I urge everybody to look at the video, because it sounds sort of nebulous and amorphous when you talk about Schedule F. What does that mean? Well, it means that Donald Trump would get rid of every expert, career, civil, and public servant serving in our executive branch. And those are the people who make our government run. They are the ones who collect our intelligence, who share intelligence with other countries, who make sure that our money that is helping other countries is spent correctly, that is ensuring proper diplomatic relationships, that is promoting democracy abroad, that is making sure that our Department of Justice is nonpartisan instead of being used as a political weapon, as Donald Trump has promised. And it keeps our people safe, our national security safe. And he wants to replace them with political hacks who don't know anything about what their jobs would be other than to just do whatever Donald Trump wants. That will mean, just to be very clear, that all of our alliances will disintegrate with other countries around the world. All of our intelligence sharing will stop, and we will not even be able to gain intelligence from our own sources and methods, because no one in their right mind would ever agree to be a source for the United States, knowing that Donald Trump will happily reveal whatever information he wants, as he did in the Oval Office to the Russian foreign minister in 2018. So our own security as a country will be absolutely eviscerated by Schedule F if Donald Trump becomes president and tries to re-implement it.
Donald Trump's also been saying that he would send the United States military against American citizens who he refers to as radical leftists. And he talks about people like Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff. And he says that Democratic Congress members and senators and Democrats are more dangerous than Vladimir Putin, President Xi, and Kim Jong-un. There was that moment where Fox tried to gaslight its audience by showing Vice President Kamala Harris during their one-on-one interview like an edited clip that edits out Donald Trump saying that, but he's repeatedly said it. And she called him out. She goes, "You edited that clip. He's been saying this all along. Let's just show the clip where Donald Trump says it. And I want to get your reaction to the fact that the leader right now of the Republican Party, as part of a presidential campaign, is saying, send the U.S. military against Americans." Play this clip.
Let's remember, you've got 50,000 Chinese nationals in this country in the last couple of years. Yeah. You have people on the terrorist watch list, 350 in the last couple of years. You got, like you said, 13,000 murderers and 15,000 rapists. Right. What are you expecting? Joe Biden said he doesn't think it's going to be a peaceful election day.
Well, he doesn't have any idea what's happening in all fairness. He spends most of his day sleeping. I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within. Not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. By the way, totally destroying our country. The towns, the villages, they're being inundated. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of election day. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen.
How is this America?
It's hard to really comprehend what he's saying there, but it basically boils down to the fact that he believes that our military should round up his political opponents, people who think differently than he does. And that is the definition of a dictatorship, of fascism. To use the military against dissenters within your own country is exactly what dictators like Vladimir Putin do around the world. And it is the exact antithesis of the democracy that has built our country for 250 years. And so it cannot be overstated, Ben, how serious this kind of rhetoric is and what it reflects about Donald Trump and how he intends to govern, which is to stamp out or jail dissenters or adversaries or enemies like any kind of banana republic. It would legitimately undo our democracy as we have existed for nearly 250 years.
What do your colleagues on the Republican side say to you? I mean, there are some ones, especially, in New York, who I think would in otherwise worlds be more kind of moderate and centrist, but they have to appeal to this kind of MAGA base. I mean, privately, you don't have to mention names, but do Republican Congress members, and you, when you're just kind of, having lunch or whatever, they're like, I don't even know what to do? Or is it just unspoken at this point?
No, some are willing to discuss that a lot of what he says is just batshit crazy. And they just try not to have to respond to it and just to ignore it and try to move on with their day. But the reality is that he controls the entire Republican Party in the House. And now, as we saw after he tanked the bipartisan border security bill in the Senate is under his thumb as well. And so you bring up New York Republicans who like to profess that they are so moderate. They have completely fallen in line with Donald Trump and the MAGA movement. They have supported overwhelmingly some of the most draconian bills that the MAGA movement has pushed forward. They are complicit and accomplices in Donald Trump's effort to undo our democracy. And what is sad is that there are people who profess to be moderates and profess privately to disagree with Donald Trump, but they will not stand up to him publicly. And that is what we saw in the last 2 years. They may claim to be moderate, but they aren't using whatever power they have to stand up to the extremism in their party. And so they're no better than any of the other MAGA extremists like Mike Johnson or Jim Jordan or Matt Gaetz or Marjorie Taylor Greene. They fall in line with those extremists who control the party. And that's why they need to be voted out of office and why the Democrats need to have the majority so we can actually do the work of the American people rather than have the most inept and ineffective Congress in 175 years.
We'll leave it at that. Congressman Dan Goldman, please come back on before the election. Anytime you want to come on, we'd love to have you.
Thanks, Ben. Great to be with you.
Hit subscribe. Let's get to 4 million subscribers this month. Have a good one.
Real quick, Meta just changed their algorithm to suppress political content. Please follow our Instagram @MeidasTouch right now as we head towards 400,000 followers so you don't miss a beat.